And now before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items to go over, and then I'll kick it over to our moderator, Julie Batchelor. During the presentation, we will have throughout the presentation, we'll have a chat section that will be asking poll questions. So if you answer the questions, you will be enrolled in a drawing for a $25 gift card. So be on the lookout for that. I want to encourage everyone to participate and let us know in the chat section where you're from, how you heard about the panel, and then any questions that you have, as we'll spend the last 15 minutes of it in a Q&A session. And now, without further ado, I'm going to let our moderator, Julie Batchelor, take it over. Thank you, Julie.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Please let me also welcome everyone to the event today. I'm Julie Batchelor, Executive Director of Endpoint Technology for the United States Postal Service. In this role, I lead a team of professionals to deliver secure end user solutions, services, and support that enable and empower the Postal Service's workforce by providing communication and collaboration tools that can be used anywhere, anytime to accelerate productivity. Prior to joining the Postal Service, I held positions in the public and private sectors, including 10 years as a Chief Information Officer for North Carolina State Agency. Please let me now have each of our panelists introduce themselves, beginning with Robert Simora, Chief Product and Technology Officer for TrueLearn.
I think Rob is on mute.
Not sure if we're having audio problems with Robert, so let me turn next to Eric Powell, Global Director at Syntax. Let's have Simon King, VP Data Quality and Integrity at Health Verity, introduce himself.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Simon King. I'm the VP of Data Quality and Integrity at Health Verity. Health Verity is a small company based out of Philadelphia, providing leading data for healthcare and real-world data analysis. I have 30 years experience working in software and data development, most notably 16 years working in healthcare IT and the past 6 working in data governance. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much, Simon. Can we try Robert again? Do you have audio now, Robert?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Great.
All right. What's a technology panel without having a technology issue, right? So Robert Simora, Chief Product and Technology Officer at TrueLearn. TrueLearn helps doctors and healthcare physicians get through their board exams. I have over 25 years experience scaling small and large companies, and super excited to spend time with everybody today.
Thank you so much, Robert. Let me now turn to Eric Powell, Global Director at Syntax.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I still have my one technical off the camera, though. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Powell. I'm the Global Director at Syntax Systems. I've been in the industry for more years than I want to admit to, but about 25 plus years, going back as far as TRS-80s and working with PCs when they were only 8-bit. I have backgrounds not only in SAP, over 15 years SAP experience, manufacturing and sales, and really looking at things from end to end, whether it be from a consumer standpoint, a hosted customer standpoint, or whether it be break fix on an IT desktop, laptops, etc. So glad to be here today and looking forward to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Let me turn now to Sravan Dodda, Director of Data Analytics and Architecture at Bell Partners.
Hi, my name is Sravan Dodda. I've been working in this IT industry for 25 plus years in different roles, like from programmer to DBA, to project lead and migrating multi-million-dollar project to latest and greatest. And last two jobs have been like a hands-on director or architect, building a product from the scratch. And in my current role here, I've been leading the data analytics and architecture team with enterprise data warehouse, the data analytics tool in Power BI, and other technology suite as well. So Bell has been in business like 40 plus years, managing the multifamily apartment housing and all those things. We also manage third party. And I'm happy to be part of this discussion, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all.
Thank you so much, Sravan. I'm sure the economy is top of mind, so let's jump into our discussion and hear from our technology experts about how to navigate in an uncertain economy. We're grouping our discussion into 3 areas: people, process, and technology. But let's start with people, as they are the most important aspect of these 3 areas. As you consider culture and communication transparency, how are you building a culture that fosters transparent communication, encourages innovation, and ensures sustainable growth? Let's start with Rob.
Thanks, Julie. Really appreciate that we're putting people first, and certainly with the pressures of a downturn in the economy, it's even more integral that we focus on our people first. And so, again, we should be motivating our employees, continually throughout, our day and day, but it even certainly means even more now in a down economy as it's looming. We need to make sure that we're pushing forward, keeping employees positive, and the best way to do that is through communication and transparency. And so providing transparency around how is the company going to weather the downturn, what is the performance of the company, what does it mean to the employee. But the more transparency that you build within your culture, specifically during this downturn, that will translate into trust amongst your employee base. And obviously, the intent here is to keep our employees happy and staying at the company. And so, the more the transparency and communication flows through, the more trust we'll have within the organization.
Right. Great thoughts, Rob. So, great thoughts. Next up, Eric, what might you add?
Well, kind of to add on to what Robert's already kind of alluded to, the transparency biggest piece, and what I go into, of course, is the communication part of it. As we have kind of gone through the pandemic and the remote locations and stuff, one of the things that we have to do with that communication connection is also make sure that we are connected to our people. And so one of the things I also throw in there, besides the transparency, that all individuals understand what the goals of the company are, what we're focusing on, and that people fully understand that, so we're all going the same way. It's that connection piece as well. So looking at it as we get in, it comes to technology as well later on, but having that one-on-one connection with the employees, understand, what's going on, where they're at, as well as just talking to them directly. Having that daily interaction, with us not being in the office like we used to, a lot of people become disconnected. So having that continuous daily interaction, standing meetings, stand-ups in my case, or sprints and those kind of things that we're doing in different planning sessions, but having that connection and that continuous connection with the people and keeping that one-to-one connection, if you know what I mean. So just basically the communication, but the connection to the people themselves and that they're staying engaged in what's going on. That's all.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Certainly, technology has been a key component as we've gone through the pandemic. So let me ask Simon, what would you add here?
So Health Verity signed a lovely new office contract just in the jaws of COVID. So we've had to shift to much more of a remote organization. We've started hiring nationally. So our engagement model has sort of come out of the office now, and it is more about how we reach out through Zoom, how we set up regular checkpoints within the company. We have a regular weekly update, which is usually has an update from the CEO or COO. At some point, we regularly hear from sales and sales wins just to understand where we are with the company. We also go for those kind of water cooler moments where we find opportunities to get the team together for non-work related items to keep them engaged. We have a a Health Verity Cafe, which is usually where somebody posts a playlist and DJs for 30 minutes. We have regular kind of TV moments where we're baking pizza or mixing cocktails or doing something that's just totally unwork related. And those kind of spawn those water cooler moments where people just talk about other things, keep engaged in what's going on, and just finding the analog for that kind of being in the office that we're unable to do now that we're so remote.
Those are really great ideas on engagement, Simon. I have to take some of those back. Sravan, your thoughts?
Yeah, people have been one of the focus areas for our company, and particularly the communication aspect has been very big on the mind. Contrary to Simon's experience, I think our company encourages people to come to the office at least 3 days a week, and we try to have this one-on-one personal conversations. And also, during these times, people, even though the job market is tight, but people are worried about the jobs because of the news that they have been seeing, about the layoffs and everything. But that's why communication has become a paramount importance to calming the nerves of the employees and our team coworkers. That is why we have a one-on-one conversation with everyone every week, so that we can understand not only about the professional work but also the personal thing. Just to make sure that we connect well and we understand well, we communicate well, and also calm the nerves of the people and then the team and all that. So I think that definitely is helping in terms of being very transparent and very open with what's going on around the world and about the company and the market in general.
I think those are some great points as we transition over and talk about alignment. So with these important considerations, how do you promote alignment among cross-functional teams? So let's hear from Simon.
So cross-functional teams, we are basically mapping out our processes so we understand the handoffs between teams. Doubly important since we're not physically sitting with each other. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we have an operations group that's sort of documenting these and putting these into a library where everyone can understand exactly for a given task or for a given process exactly what steps there are. We're essentially creating what we call the rhythm of business. So as we understand things come in on sales, things come in on support, there's kind of a natural set of activities that take place. And it's not a forced trying to remember who's on point and where are they and how do I get in touch with them. We are sort of making sure that everyone understands exactly what's expected of them, taking feedback even, as we refine those on a constant basis. It really comes down to making sure that we find the constraints right in those processes so that those become the bottlenecks, the decision points, and we manage to those. So we're not taking on more work than we can pass through any particular point, right, in our end-to-end process. And finally, it's just really coming down that drives consistency, right, and predictability, so that as we try and engage people, that it doesn't become a kind of a random walk through all the things that can happen. There's a known set of things that can take place, and so people are prepared, right, and understand their role in the overall process.
Well, thank you, Simon. Sravan?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we circling back to the communication aspect, I think working with cross-functional teams is communication is one big piece of thing that we have been focusing on, as well as building the workflows using some automated tools, like for example, Power Automate is one great example that we have been implementing to kind of communicating with cross-functional teams, and also we foster cross-functional or cross-team kind of training. Like for example, if someone is on vacation or someone is maybe not here or something like that, so somebody else can take care of the business that other person is doing. So we kind of it may or may not be we may or may not be using it a lot, but at least this gives us an understanding of what each other person does, and also can become a backup. And also in this aspect, we're also using the DevOps as a good way of communicating and handing off the jobs from one person to the other, so that the communication flow will be there and also the workflow will be there.
Thank you, Sravan. Roth, would you have anything to add?
Sure. I love what Simon brought up as far as rhythm of the business. I think everybody has the bias towards their own function and thinking about what do I need to put in place to keep that, connection with my folks? What is the cadence? What are the updates? But we tend to spend less time on the cross-functional, which has as much, if not more, importance across the organization. And so I like the rhythm of the business of thinking about what are the different, especially as we live in this virtual hybrid world, what are the meetings that are really integral to make sure that we are sharing the right information, giving our other functions that are dependent on us the right information at the right time. Are we really working together and being efficient? For us at TrueLearn, we use our sprint reviews, which is with the whole company. We have a product monthly that is with the full extended leadership team. And so we have put in specific meetings and a cadence so that people know, hey, this is where I can go for the information, because specifically as the theme of this around a downturn in the economy, uncertainty is going to be a theme here. And so a lack of information from a specific function is going to lead to somebody having those uncertain feelings, and even more so. So the more that we can have that connectivity cross-functionally, the better everybody will be towards the company goals, as well as just feeling good about where the company is going.
Sure. Great observations. Eric?
Kind of adding on to what's been said, a few things. And from a syntax standpoint and from my history with in IT in general, I've looked at global teams, cross-functional teams, and a few of the things that we always run into is the different teams have different priorities or what their different goals are. So it goes back to a little bit of communication, but one, fundamentally across all the teams, regardless whether it's operations, whether it's DevOps, whether it is sales or marketing, doesn't matter, have the same common goals and what I'll go from customer service standpoint. In the end, we're here for our customers. If everybody starts from that objective point, goal-wise, that we all are here for our customers, then the alignment and the priorities should start falling together as well. And what I've found over the years is that when some of the goals are different, whereas an operations team may be focusing on reducing their KPIs for tickets, as an example, but not looking at the efficiency of the tickets or how it impacts the customer satisfaction in the end, that's where we kind of have the breakdown at the cross-functional level. One team says their metrics are great, but because they're only looking at it from their myopic or their tunnel view, they don't see the big picture and the final impact to our customers. The other thing, which you already alluded to during the call so far, but it's very important, is to have one common place for the information to be available. Our ITSM tool of choice is ServiceNow, as an example. All the teams can go to ServiceNow, see the relevant information, whether it be customer related, operations related, statuses from sprints or et cetera, from our DevOps team, but it gives us one place to go to. So the other key point I'll bring up again is, from a cross-functional standpoint, communications and having one place for all the teams to go to get the same message and the same statuses and same priorities. So
great observations and methodologies from our panelists, and I'd just like to echo those. At the Postal Service, we're very focused on cross-functional engagement. As you can all imagine, we are very focused on our peak season. So a lot of interactions across all our organizations from a readiness standpoint. So I think we're now going to pause for a moment for a poll question. Okay. So I think encourage everyone to have an entry there for, in your opinion, is the U.S. economy headed towards a recession? Okay. So while folks are responding to that question, Would just like to talk a little bit more from a process standpoint. Simon talked about the rhythm of business, and we heard a lot about process elements to encourage communication and conversation, collaboration. So let's look a little bit more about process. How important is alignment on business strategy level, and what are the consequences of not being aligned? And how do you adjust to changes in the market demand and or effectively realign resources due to market conditions? Eric, may we start with you?
Sure, no problem. So in reference to the strategy and business alignment, again, it goes back to communication. So number one, understanding from a business process standpoint, or I'll go to sales, is what is it we're trying to achieve and what we're looking at from a market saturation standpoint. We're trying to get 15% growth this year and achieve 35% market saturation are what we're looking for. Understanding that and have it communicated to the internal teams is the first part of it. The second part of it, though, is, again, goes to making sure all the teams understand what our goals are, is that we all are using the same metrics and KPIs, and we're feeding into that of how we get to those goals. If there is an issue, I'll give you an example this way, that sales is out selling things, and I think we all can appreciate this, where sales may sell something that we haven't built yet, that's great for us getting the acquisition for the sales part, but now operations or DevOps has to figure out how to create that product and actually make it available then. If we know up front that these are the 5 products we're going to sell to our competitors or our customers, and DevOps and engineering already has those things in the pipeline, then we can better meet the expectations of the customers when it's going to be a 30-day turnaround for delivery. So having all those different pieces, what is this team doing? What are they doing to the market? What are they selling? Do we have those products in our pipeline? Can we develop and deliver them on time? And also fully understand what is the commitment we have to the customers and when these things will be available to them. So having all those bits of information intertwined, connected, and communicated is very important from process. And again, it goes back to a common tool, a common platform, and also proper and consistent communications and cadences with all the teams.
So thank you, Eric. Simon, what might you add?
So Health Verity is essentially a data broker. So we sit between suppliers of data and customers. So generally, we are basically delivering what's available and to what's ordered. But what we're trying to do is look ahead and see what the trends are in those orders. We've been able to make lemonade from lemons over the last couple of years. While everyone was trying to figure out what COVID meant, we were able to kind of define it in data terms and start delivering data products based on COVID, which gave us quite a large growth area in a time which was otherwise depressed. We've done the same thing recently with monkeypox and most recently with RSV, both being sort of headline pandemic type responses, which people need to have data to drive. So we've taken great pains to kind of look at what are the market drivers, and making sure that we add that into kind of our process review, making sure that we are either adding new suppliers or treating data in a different way or pre-analyzing data in some way, right, to make it more deliverable and more timely. We do a lot of that through tracking, right? We've had a lot of I think tools mentioned here. Internally, we use Jira. We use it a number of different ways, everything from running agile teams to kind of Kanban boards. And so we are trying to stay ahead of the business strategy by kind of looking ahead at what are the trends in what we're being asked, and making sure that we bring that back in, right, and update our processes appropriately, updating that process mapping, right, the rhythm of business as we'd mentioned before.
Thank you for that, Simon. Sravan?
Yeah, since fortunately for our company, like last few years has been very robust in terms of the business because of the mortgage housing market has been kind of blazing hot and everything. And during that time, we knew that it's not going to be sustainable in the long term. So we were planning ahead for what's going to come soon, maybe in the future. So we started, things like, sourcing the data, for example, market data and everything from different companies, and also some global publications. to find the trends and the kind of developments in terms of the mortgages, in terms of the housing market and which areas are doing good and all that. And we have used these processes like a enterprise data warehouse and the cubes and all those things to kind of pull all the data together and analyze the data very closely on a monthly basis. So that's one thing. And also, like I mentioned, we started kind of automating some of our processes. For example, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery and deployment, so that some of these things can be automated and also kind of increase more reliance on the process and the accuracy of those things. And as I mentioned earlier, like DevOps is one of those great tools that we have been using. And also data ops for our businesses. I mean, not much data ops, but DevOps is one of the big tools that we have been using to kind of improve the processes. And earlier I mentioned about the Power Automate, just to improve the workflows and the automatic sign-offs and all those things. So process and the people has been so big in our kind of strategy in terms of taking it further.
Well, thank you, Sravan. Rob?
Thanks, Julie. I like the way that you framed it, the question up front of how important the business strategy is and the alignment of it. Specifically, again, as we think about uncertain times, I know at TrueLearn, we are doubling down our focus on the business strategy and what are our priorities and what are we focused on, because that is the why for the organization. That is when things are getting lean, when people are looking for something to attach to, it's that business strategy and alignment around the why that's going to give them the motivation and alignment with others of this is why we're doing these things. This is why we're trying to do more with less. This is what we are doing. We don't have as much maybe margin of error because we have either less people, less resources. And so attaching to that business strategy, the why, is going to be as important as ever, but even more so, again, in these uncertain times.
Great. Thank you so much, Rob. So let's talk a little bit more. We've talked about the why, but let's talk a little bit more about the how and really dig in and maybe talk about specific processes. We've heard mentioned DevOps, some organizations like the Postal Service, DevSecOps. We've heard data ops from our panelists today. So in regards to that, what are some methods and strategies that can be employed to ensure consistency, speed, and standards? Simon, may I start with you?
Yes, certainly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about data ops, which is in my area. So essentially, we are just trying to make the same predictability around processes that we expect to be applied to team members to the way that we onboard and manage and cleanse data. So it's vital that we kind of get to that consistency, that predictability. As we head towards recession, you probably heard more about doing more with less. We're trying to be faster with the same. So we have many different types of feed, many different types of data, and not all data is created equal. So one of the most important things that we look to do is document what the intent of the data is, how we're handling it, and how people should be interpreting it. That not only helps the internal mechanisms, so we make sure we're making the right choices as we process that data, but we can now talk in common terms both to the suppliers and to the customers, so that when we talk about a medical term, we're not being vague. And anyone who's been in the healthcare industry for any period of time knows that there's many ways of saying exactly the same thing, and not everyone takes the same meaning. So it all comes down to making sure that we're talking the same semantics. So from our data ops perspective, it is making sure that things are efficient and consistent, predictable, and that the data itself is consistent and predictable, and that we can talk about it in a common and meaningful way. That helps everyone within the organization when we talk about how we're going to enter a new area or use data in a new way. We're using consistent terms, and helps everyone understand almost immediately like what we're talking about, as opposed to having to start from scratch on every new opportunity, every new delivery. We have that common framework already built out. That's quite a challenge. I mean, we need to document a lot of different terms, a lot of different feeds. And so we're going to be spending the next probably next year or so, trying to figure out how to build that out, to source that data, to source that information from within our own organization, as well as subject matters we can call upon to help us with those definitions.
Great, thank you so much. Sravan, do you want to expand? I think you touched on DevOps as well.
Sure. DevOps and CI/CD processes have been very helpful for us. In addition to that, I'm sure, in these times, we may have to do more with less, in the sense that it's not only the speed and the quantity, but also the accuracy. So we focus mostly on the quality of data because we wanted to have single instance of truth. So that's why we spend a good bit of time on the master data management. So this could, can be combined with the data governance piece of it. So that we all look at the same data the same way, in the same aspect. Like, for example, we do the cataloging. We also have this lineage, how the data comes, how the data goes, and where it is kind of ending up, so that everyone looks at the same kind of process and the flow and everything, as well as the data, because some people may look at some reports and they may find different data, so they may be wondering, the accuracy of the data may be not right. So that's why we are trying to bring in the master data management piece to make the processes, and also to build the confidence among the customers as well as the internal team.
Very key insights, particularly around the master data management. Rob?
Some common themes here, but in general, focusing on process for us, our top three are DevOps, quality, and Scrum of Scrums. We've done 4 acquisitions, and so getting the development teams to understand where the integration pieces are. But as a general best practice, where you always have the top 3 processes that we are working on, and then we will keep moving along as we feel like we've gotten enough efficiency within that process. Trying to drive efficiency within the processes to lighten the load on people. Again, the emphasis on the people aspect of it, that we're going to be asking them to do more. And so the more that we can utilize process to take some of the inefficiency out of the processes and the things that we do day to day is going to be key to keeping employees motivated and feeling like they're not getting overwhelmed by inefficient things within the organization.
I think that's a really key point, because inefficiency is always a challenge and can be a real setback for our employees. Eric?
Okay. Kind of really to summarize, a lot of the points I was going to also highlight are already been discussed, but the number one priority really, looking at the list, is single source of truth. And that goes back to the data ops part of it as well. I mentioned earlier, we're talking about having a single tool to go to and that everybody's using the same tool. Well, from an ITSM standpoint, I'll use an example again, my company as an example of ServiceNow. We have our CMDB, Configuration Management Database. That is the single source of truth for everybody downstream, whether it be sales, whether it be operations or DevOps. So we all are coming from the same foundation of what we're working from. The other part of that, with the quality of the data, as well as having a single source of truth, it comes into that how's that data being pushed into the CMDB. We have a set process, we have an automated process, something that reduces the possibility of data errors, as an example. The other point, which kind of goes into that as well, is then looking at efficiencies from the DevOps standpoint, automation standpoint, as we build our products, in this case, hosting, in my case, as we build our service for hosting, that everything's done consistently. And even then, if something's done incorrectly, and this is where I call it cadence, we know when we fix it, that the cadence will cover across all processes, and the final level product will be fixed across the board then. So single source of truth, same tool that everybody's looking from, getting the data, and they're going to the same place. And then efficiencies and automation, that we're doing things the same way. And even if the automation is broken, we know that when we fix it, the final product will be fixed for everybody then, not just for a single case. And again, like we also said as well, doing more with less. So that's all.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. I think, we've had some great conversations on process and heard some references to technology, but before we turn to that, I think we have another poll. All right. So what superpower do you wish you had? Flight, super strength, teleportation, invisibility, or mind reading? Those are some tough choices. And I'm assuming we're limited to one, so you have to go for your top. Okay, so while you're picking your superpower, let's talk a little bit about technology. So how are digital transformation, emerging technologies, and other external factors affecting your industry or company? And how can they be leveraged to further recession-proof our companies and operations? But before we turn to our panelists, I'd like to share that the Postal Service is on a transformation journey. Our Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, led publication of the Postal Service's 10-year Delivering for America plan in March of last year. The plan is designed to transform the organization from one in financial crisis to one that is self-sustaining. And our CIO organization is supporting this by creating a digitally dexterous next-generation workforce. We're focused on the core technologies with cloud, data streaming, data analytics, data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence to leverage technology as part of our transformation. So let's now hear from Sravan and what are you doing within your company?
Sure. Actually, automation in making the processes self-run, like automated mode. This is one of the big focus for us. In that aspect, AI is one of the big focuses that we have, but we are going in that direction, particularly with our analytics tools like Power BI and all those things. Sometimes when you give the dashboards and everything to the team and your team members and co-workers are like in the senior management, it's kind of difficult for them to kind of analyze the data, so that we now that we are using the AI that is built in for Power BI, we are actually using some of the the advantages of it, as well as we are some of these monotonous, cumbersome, data entry kind of stuff. We have been using the robotic process automation where these can be automated easily. And as I alluded earlier, Power Automate is one of those we have been using a lot. So I think we are machine learning. We haven't been there, but we will be focusing on it shortly. But right now, AI has been helping us a lot.
Thank you very much, Sravan. Rob?
So similarly, going down the machine learning, we're a test prep company. And so the better we understand the individual using our platform, the better we can understand how much they know, what they don't know, which questions are the right question to ask next. But all this is geared around how do we build or leverage technology to make it a easier process for our customers, but not only for our customers, but internally for how do we make changes, how do we add new features. And so focus here and emphasis on technology to make it easier, not just for our customers, but internally. And we are using machine learning, digital transformation. We can go down the long list of things that are going on within cloud. But again, just trying to leverage all of these technologies in a way that lowers the cost to serve, lowers the amount of time it takes to get things through a sprint, but really trying to get efficiencies through technology.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Eric?
It's going to be repetitive a little bit, but basically the same thing from a syntax standpoint. And again, syntax, hosting ERP systems, JD Edwards, Oracle, other platforms. So we host things for our customers. And with that, the focus for us, and I've seen the shift in the last, I'd say 6 years or so, has been from working things in the private cloud, which private cloud we call data centers. So a lot of us are familiar with having a data center in one location and having the other one somewhere else. A lot of the shift I've seen the last several years has been moving from private cloud to public cloud. So looking at how the environment and how the overall landscape has changed to leveraging things in AWS or leveraging things in Azure or OCI in those environments is part of what the emerging technologies have caused us to look at. But the fundamental part of that, though, and kind of goes back to everything comes back together is what is our goal? Is taking care of our customers. So understanding what the customer's requirements are, where they're located at, what business processes, whether it be manufacturing deliveries at a plant site or a printing line, for a food company trying to get things out the door for deliveries, is how those things are impacting them and what we can do to better ensure they have the proper uptime and efficiencies. So whether we're going to be in private cloud, in local data centers, which again, we're moving more towards public, and that has proper redundancy and connections for them, or we move towards public cloud in AWS, Azure, OCI as examples. The other part of that with that transformation and migration to the newer technologies comes into, again, the repetitive nature of things, using DevOps, using automation to consistently build the products for our customers that always are consistent. So that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Simon?
So I'm probably going to echo a lot of the things, but essentially for us, we mentioned kind of data governance. So from a technology perspective, we're looking at some of the things that I think Sravan had mentioned. Data cataloging, right? Somewhere where you've essentially got a Google search capability within your organization to find not only the data, but the definition and the use of the data. Data lineage tools to actually show us where the data is moving throughout our organization. We've started to look at some AI and ML logic to start early mapping and understanding the data. And I think there'll be opportunities to kind of take that forward in terms of being able to predict the kind of cohorts that we have to create to make deliveries as well. So we're leveraging the kind of unified data stack and trying to make sure, as I mentioned before, we're trying to make not only the people efficient, but the process efficient. So we're looking through that through adoption of technology and application of contained learning, right, in terms of ML and AI wherever possible.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Simon. Just so many references to technology here, Sravan with the robotics, the Power Automate, Power BI and dashboards, machine learning with Rob, and the transition from private cloud to public cloud that Eric mentioned. Certainly data governance and data cataloging. So much of what we've got to rely on is the quality and the accuracy of the data. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper. So take your component or share with the other panelists. But how can current technology trends positively or negatively affect the customer and also employees? And how do we leverage the trends? So perhaps we'll start with Eric, and maybe you can expand a little bit on your private cloud to public cloud journey, or if you'd like to touch on one of the other technologies.
Sure. Makes sense. Happy to. So for reference, like I said, Syntax is a hosting company. We do ERP globally. We actually we're part of multiple acquisitions over the last 10 years. And with that, one of the subsidiaries where I came from was Freudenberg. And with that, Freudenberg has a long history in the industry, customer service with SAP for years. But with that, one of the primary things we looked at was, having private cloud, working things in our data centers, one of the landmark things. And for the past 15 years, that's one of the biggest things that we looked at. However, in the last 5 to 6 years, with the advancements in public cloud and AWS and Azure and Google and everything else, a lot of customers are looking for more of that reduced cost, higher efficiencies, and also speed to delivery then. And so what we've seen from the hosting and industry standpoint, a move from having all that investment in the local data centers that we've had to spin up over the last 15, 20 years to moving to more what's leveraged from our cloud providers instead. When I look at the breakout, where I would say, every new customer I see today coming into our environment is in private cloud versus public, the answer is probably going to be more public because they see the leveraging, they see the flexibility of being able to move from region to region. A lot of the customers are looking at a global implementation. And the idea for a company to have to build a data center here and then in China and then in Germany and leverage that versus using a public provider that already has that infrastructure, has those things in the ether, in the cloud, that makes a big difference then. On the negative side, from a customer standpoint is sometimes customers hear new things that we haven't really tested out yet, or the newest thing on the block. And sometimes those things are what the customer wants us to implement. And that's where it's negative in that either we don't have the experience in it. I'm not saying this is a true case, but that's where the negative impact could come in. When I look at it from the employee standpoint, we also can get into things like, for instance, newer technologies like Kubernetes right now and clustering in containers. That's one of the biggest things that our R&D envision is looking into heavily and how we leverage that going forward. But with those many newer technologies or newer things that are on the horizon, how do we make sure that our employees and our R&D teams know how to leverage that for the customer? A lot of customers hear the latest thing since sliced bread, as I would say, but they don't really understand how it's really going to give them a proper return on investment, how it's really going to leverage their business. And that comes to where me being the provider, I have to be that expert and give that information to them. So that's my comments. So
no, thank you so much, Eric. Perhaps Simon, you touched on a unified data stack, or if you'd like to expand on just data governance.
Right. So essentially, our goal as a broker was to deliver data to the customer, and then we relied on the customer to know what they were doing and run their analysis. As we've sort of matured, we're leveraging some of this knowledge in-house now to basically build better data sets, better cohorts, providing more certainty about the lineage of the data, the provenance of the data, making sure that people understand that not two data sets are not created equal, and that you may use them in combination to prove your point or to prove your analysis. So where we see technology making the customer's life better is by giving that lineage, giving that explanation, explaining the semantics, making sure that we are managing and handling the data appropriately internally, and not just essentially taking data in and shoveling it out on the other end, right? In buckets, right? We're trying to put it out into packages that make sense, packages that meet their requirements, packages that essentially earn the value that we're charging between as a brokerage. So where we see that positively improving is that our quality is better. We're better able to represent the data. It's right the first time. It's what they need the first time. And if there are variances in the data, we're able to explain them and sort of give them more reassurance that they're getting what they paid for.
Absolutely. Quality of data is key. Sravan, you touched on a number of items around Power BI, Power Automate, and dashboards. And so what would you like to expand on?
Yes, I think one thing is that we try to make things more self-servable, like meaning like some of the reporting aspects, like we are striving to make sure that every employee does not have to come to the IT to get an answer. So we have built some self-serve reporting capabilities, and also, as I mentioned earlier, master data and the single fact of truth. I mean, the instance of truth is one of the things that we have been focusing, so that everybody gets to see the same data. And also, like we have building some apps. For example, we have a lot of apartment properties where they inspect the pools and all those things. Previously, it used to be like they used to write all those things on the paper, like pH values and all these things for the pools. And now that we have created apps so that they can actually do that on the fly at the pool itself on a tab, so that all the data gets fed into our system. So these are some of the things I know. This is going to help us, the employees, a whole lot, and also our users, like because they are getting the data the way they want it, and also very fast. So they don't have to wait for it. But on the downside is that since there will be a bit of anxiety in the employees, because we have been doing a lot of automation and everything. So that's one thing, is that we will have to basically give an impression to the employees that it's not going to jeopardize their employment, because we have 1, 3, and 5 year plans for our IT, particularly because I'm speaking purely on my department side. So But given that the uncertainties, like for example, like last 3 years, the business has been robust, but now it's going to go down. So we get to kind of trend it down a little bit by using more, doing more with less by using more automation. So and also we had to make sure that people understand that the automation doesn't necessarily mean that elimination of jobs or something. So this is definitely has some little bit of impact on the psyche of the people, but as long as we can communicate properly and calm their nerves, probably should be good for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Sravan. Rob, I know you touched on machine learning. Any thoughts you'd like to add here as far as the specifics around technology?
Yeah, I'll just wrap up the technology piece just with some thoughts. We live in an age right now where there is unlimited amount of technology. We've talked about and touched upon some of those. I see Dennis, I see your comment in the chat, and I think it is a good reminder, and it was top of mind for me earlier in this conversation around the alignment with the business strategy, in that if we are just implementing things for technology's sake, we are missing a big piece of why. And we could have the greatest technology in place, but it's not connected to where the business is going. And so it is a good reminder. It's a good way to finish up the technology piece of ensuring that as technologists or leaders within our organizations, that we understand our business, we understand what the business is trying to accomplish, and that the technologies that we are implementing are implemented for the outcomes of what we want from the business, not outcomes that we want just from a technology standpoint. So really good point there, Dennis.
Well, thank you, Rob, on that. So we've covered people, process, and technology, but let's talk about potentials. So economic uncertainty can lead to opportunities. How do you find the counterwave? How do you identify unique growth opportunities? How do you find the niche in the market that is growing? So can we start again with you, Rob, on that?
Sure. So I always have conversations internal and with other folks just around innovation in general. And I think, with innovation, I think the definition around it, I think everybody thinks about the shiny new, it's got to be something different. But I think innovation specifically also, as we get into these uncertain times, can be innovation around a process, innovation around things that exist already. And so I think it's a challenge to us as leaders, to our organization, to be innovative each and every day in the things that we do, because it's an opportunity to make an impact in ways that can, get us through these uncertain times. Certainly, it's great if we could find that little niche or something that's going to drive the business with new revenue stream, but it's also a challenge, again, just to think about innovation differently in what we do day to day as well, and making an impact.
Sure. Eric, your thoughts on this?
I know it's kind of sounds repetitive at times. I would say probably about the same thing. The biggest thing is, knowing the needs from the customer standpoint, what they're looking for. But when we look around, I won't say the newest trends, but what is the easiest way to get the information out there? We kind of mentioned self-service as an example. Those kind of things are even bigger. People are using more portals. How do we leverage that? I go back to with my teams. I say, number one, if you do the same process more than once or twice manually, you need to find a way to have that automated and find an innovative way to make that something consistent, as well as how do we do things that are, more self-service and people can get what they need versus doing 3 or 4 steps. So again, always looking at things from that standpoint, whether it be, again, process, technology, service, or anything. How do we make things simpler, and more convenient is what I go with. So.
Thank you, Eric. Simon, any opportunities you've jumped onto?
Well, I think I mentioned before that we found opportunity during COVID and the pandemic. But internally, it's just encouraging curiosity to allow people to try something and fail fast. Not all good ideas come from the top. We need to be able to encourage people to look at things from the bottom up. We need to be able to take those and see how many of those can be kind of harnessed and used. For a data perspective, it's just always be listening. I'd always be figuring out what the customers are really asking for, and then kind of figure out where you have to skate to get to where the puck is going to be rather than where it was, and figure out internally, right, do we have a gap? Do we have a gap in process? Do we have a gap in data? And just start encouraging people to figure out how we plug those.
Great. Thank you, Simon. And Sravan, maybe just quickly, you have some thoughts so we can jump over to the Q&A?
Absolutely. As the saying goes, necessity is mother of invention, and I would say recession or the difficult times is the mother of innovation, I guess. And particularly in terms of this, we may have to, come up with different innovations, like in terms of how better we can do the same processes using different technologies and tools, and how you can build the system instead of relying on something else. So, like again, for example, like one of the things that we have seen is like, we have big database, and how we can leverage the database to do more analytics and get more insights and find more opportunities to do more business and bring more revenue. Great.
Thank you, Sravan. We're getting close on time, so we'd like to just spend a couple of minutes on the questions that are in our chat. What I'd like to do is start with the first question. What specifically are new behaviors required to compete in an increasingly dynamic environment? So perhaps instead of going through a round robin, if somebody wants to jump onto that one, and then we'll go on to the next question.
I would just say agility, right? Within your own organization, you've got to be able to change your plans quickly. You can't be tied to tactics that were developed for a strategy that was set 2 years ago.
Very true. Very true. Next question, and I think this kind of leads into that. As your organization's change strategy, how are you addressing technical debt? To ensure your maintenance efforts don't outweigh the value of your product or services. Sorry for a little bit of a gap there.
I'll kind of a little bit of answer to that, and I would say you have to one, keep track of technical debt, because again, I'm in that situation with the multiple acquisitions. But I would say you have to keep track of the technical debt and find a way to remove it, because the longer you ignore it or the longer you let it sit there, it's going to be more problematic and affect efficiencies further down the road. If you have technical debt that's a year old, you really want to address it sooner than later. If you wait 4 or 5 years, the amount of impact that debt has could really impact your final delivery to your customer. So regardless of the strategy changing, the technical debt should always be a priority and be eliminated. So
just to add on that, just real quickly, I know we're butting up to time, but with technology debt, I'm always in favor of, if you can attach technical debt to another project that brings value, meaning you are changing a piece of the platform that adds new features, and you can also address technical debt at the same time or within an infrastructure. You're getting some benefit as well as addressing what's in technical debt, but also aligning to what you're trying to accomplish, again, at a higher level versus just getting to the technical debt and not having some guidance or alignment to where you're trying to go.
Thank you. So if we have time for one more question, Michael, what assumptions will have the biggest impact on how the future will unfold?
That's a tough one. I would say the assumption is where you're going to spend your money. You've got to, you're only going to recognize investment if you actually make it. So for me, it's going to be, you have to make assumptions about where the economy is going, and you're going to have to allocate money accordingly. And as we mentioned before, just be agile, right? Be prepared to change that very quickly.
Well, I know we're top of the hour, so looks like we've had out of time. Great discussion today. I hope the discussion has been informative and helpful. So let me turn it back over to Susan.
Sorry about that delay there. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today, and thank you especially for our panelists. It was a fantastic discussion. I think there was a lot of good questions and answers all around. A lot of great topics to think about, a lot of great topics to discuss with your peers and other employees, friends. But thanks again, everyone. We had a great time here, and thanks again for attending for those who attended.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.